Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, a crime has been committed. Now, this was not a crime strictly in the legal sense per se, but nonetheless, it resulted in the loss of over $2.3 million. The victim of this crime was me. And like our justice system, there are two separate yet equally important groups: those who investigate crime, and that's also me, and those who prosecute the offenders, me again. I'm also the judge. Now, as I lay this case out before you this evening, I must begin with something of a confession. I am a lawyer. You may have deduced that from my flawless use of the phrase per se. But I assure you that I am not your stereotypical, smarmy, asshole kind of lawyer. Objection! I'll allow it, but watch yourself, counselor. Thank you. As I was saying, I am but a humble public servant, modestly paid for my skills and education. But that was not always the case. Once upon a time, I was just a young law student. And like many law students, I had ambition. I planned on graduating at the top of my class and becoming a highly paid attorney at a prestigious law firm. In other words, your stereotypical, smarmy, asshole kind of lawyer. Objection sustained. Now, as I said, I had a plan, and step one of that plan was law school success. And for that, I signed up for the Legal Services Clinic, which was a full-year set of courses where law students represent low-income clients in actual cases, a real-world experience kind of thing. Taken together, these classes would account for a quarter of my credits for the entirety of law school, very much putting all of my GPA eggs in one basket. But it was reported that the clinic was what Justice Cardozo's opinion in Paul's graph would refer to as an easy A. Now, and I submit to you that I did a bang-up job, and that is the legal term for it. My main case was representing a young single mother of two trying to get Social Security benefits, and even though I personally thought she had a pretty weak case, I argued zealously on behalf of my client, as was my ethical duty, and I won that case. So when the end of the year came, I felt I had more than earned my easy A. But when the grades were released, I was shocked to learn that I had been given a C+, which is just a grade-inflated D. That C+ was inexplicable to me, so I went to see my clinic instructor about it. Not in a I demand to see the manager kind of way. It was just, I was confused because I truly believed that I had done as good a job as my friends who had gotten A's. So I sat down in my clinic instructor's office and I asked her, what had I done wrong? And she looked straight at me and she said, Nick, you're a misogynist. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, if it seems to you that this case has taken an unexpected left turn, I quite assure you that it did for me too. But I immediately mounted an aggressive defense of myself, which consisted of, My closing argument was to retreat from her office in a wordless stupor. And in defense of my less than stellar defense, I had never been called a misogynist before, and even now, I am not sure how to prove that I am not, in fact, a misogynist. I mean, I could say, I'm not a misogynist, but that's exactly what a fraternity brother would say, so not exactly exculpatory testimony. And I must concede, and I recognize that this is a very serious issue, but I think we'll just have to stipulate that I strenuously object to the characterization and move on from there. What I can say is the damage was done, because instead of graduating near the top of my class, my GPA was dragged down to the middle, and instead of getting a job at a prestigious law firm, I did workers' comp for a firm with an ad on the back of the phone book, and not in Manhattan, but in Cleveland. For the record, that is an honorable line of work in an underrated American city, but still not exactly raking in the big bucks. In fact, if you'll refer to Exhibit G, which exists entirely within your own imagination, you can see that if you chart my actual earnings against what I would have expected to earn at a large law firm, it compounds over time, resulting in a shortfall of well over $2 million and counting. And I know that money isn't everything, and I must admit that I'm perfectly comfortable and content in my life, but if I'm honest, it bothered me. For the longest time, years, it bothered me that the whole trajectory of my career could be derailed by something that I could not begin to explain. It was a cold case unsolved mystery. Until a break in the case. See, it was about 6 years later that I was at a party here in our nation's capital, and in the course of an otherwise ordinary conversation, I learned the meaning of a particular phrase. And that phrase was, "See you next Tuesday." Now, some of you may already know the provenance of that phrase, but I suspect that there are many of you who are, like I was, not familiar. And I had heard the phrase before, but I just thought it was an old-timey sobriquet, as in, what a character, that old so-and-so, he's a real see you next Tuesday. But were it so innocent? You see, an expert linguist, especially a cunning one, would tell you that the phrase "see you next Tuesday" has an interesting etymology. See, the first two words in the phrase are what is known as a mondegreen, where a word's sound gives it a new meaning. In this case, letters. See you. Well, the second half of the phrase is just your standard acronym. N for next, Tuesday. See you next Tuesday. I have never used that word. I'll remind you that you are under oath. Never in my life. Nor would I. But as I was at that party where I learned what one might see next Tuesday, my mind instantly flashed back to my clinic instructor's office, where over the course of the school year, I had used that phrase more than once. To wit, man, my client, she's a real see you next Tuesday. And also, did you hear what Mary said in class this week? What a see you next Tuesday! Suddenly, I understood my instructor's accusation of misogyny, and it was then I realized that I was the murderer of my career all along. Plot twist! Gasps from the gallery, order in the court, I rest my case.